Hi, really good to be here with my good buddy and friend Junior. How you doing, pal?
I'm very well, mate, very well.
Look, really excited to go over this new project with you.
Thank you.
Everyting Set.
That's right.
Everyting Set.
That's right.
Now, it's really the story of the man and his music told over 4 decades. Junior's going to go back through some of his classic tracks, but the big surprise is he's recorded it totally in reggae music. So give us an insight into where that's all come from.
I think it came from basically being from West Indian distraction. I mean, like reggae music was coming into the house all the time. We had soul music coming in as at the same time. We had pop music, jazz, gospel. We were just open as a family to music, and my love was reggae music. I love early reggae music from ska, right, to when it went to from blue beat to ska, from ska moving it all the way along. There was just different songs that used to come around, and they would always just infuse the family. And for me, when I was in my early teens, it was like people like Burning Spear, right? You know, the Heptones, right? Those men then was making some music, you know what I'm saying? And obviously, you know, early Bob Marley, Small Axe, you know, late 60s, early 70s. All of these tunes were making an impact on, at the same time, Motown was happening, and you know, that was kicking in, and I enjoyed Motown. Then there was Stax that was kicking in, right? You know, and then there was people like Giscombe who was coming around and talking about what was going on with black people during that particular period of time as well. So there's this fusion, right? And reggae was always at the bottom of it as the foundation.
I mean, it's an interesting time because, I mean, you mentioned Giscombe and you talking about reggae music, and both of them bring out, there was a level of protest where people used music to express, and reggae music was obviously a part of that.
I think that was the thing for me, was that because of where I was going as a human being, so by 11, 12, I'm going to a place there was an Oval House, and my 2 older sisters used to take me down there, and I'd get there, and it would be, I don't know, it could be a Nelson Mandela speech, it could be a Stephen Biko speech, it could be a Malcolm speech, right? All of these people were protesting against the injustices of how they were living. And in England at the time, we were, as young boys, growing to understand the injustice that was going on concerning us, and in terms of us being able to, we were looking up at the glass ceiling, we were looking up and saying we can do this, but not really fully understanding. Going to these meetings were giving me an insight into how black Americans were living. At the same time, my mum was a Garveyite, so my mum knew herself. So what she implanted in us was this whole thing of it's not about because of colour, don't allow it, right? Don't see yourself as a second-class citizen because of how it's projected. You're not.
Big point.
You know, and that was the sticking point for me. That was the thing that made me, I suppose, that's the character that I have today.
And a lot of that narrative came through reggae music, and of course through some of
a lot of the soul music at the time.
Yeah.
Right, the protest music at the time. Because remember, I'm coming from being a kid during the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
I'm coming through being a kid when apartheid was in place. I'm seeing injustices towards people of colour right across the board, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to school and learning slightly, more so from my mum, but learning about India and how India was split, the time it took for India to be split, and what occurred during that period. I'm learning all of this as a kid away from school. It wasn't school that taught me any of this.
And eventually this manifests itself in your music and the storytelling that you've done over the years. And I think that that's a good way of putting it, because it really has been a catalogue of life observations and stories, hasn't it?
Pretty much so. I used to call myself the Sponge, but now I've got like a granddaughter and I call her Sponge. Right? Right? Because that's what I did. I would just take everything and then rinse it out. Yeah. And you know, so you're allowing your mind to be open to all kinds of different things. So you're being told one thing, but what you're seeing in actuality is something completely different. But it's obvious, but because it's so obvious, it's oblivious.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, I needed to, instead of taking on everything, I needed to understand me, to be able to access my mind then, to be open enough, right, to understand what was taking place. It was a mindset that was being given to you in terms of how you should approach your life. I.e., you go to your careers officer and he says, be an electrician, be a plumber, be anything other than using your brains because you're good with your hands. If you could sprint, wicked, we're gonna push you. If you could play football, wicked, we're gonna push you, but only so far. You either assimilate when you get there, or you're out the door. I didn't choose to assimilate. I chose to be an individual that took part within a setup.
And we're glad you did. Junior Giscombe, the man and his music. We're talking about Everything Set, the new reggae album, charting the story of the man over 4 decades. You'll learn about the man, you'll learn about his music, and a whole heap more. Thank you, Junior.